Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I know that this looks a little bit different than how I'm normally doing deck walkthroughs, but I wanted to kind of wrap my head around some things and kind of point some things out, and it was just easier for me to kind of do what I'm doing right here. So we are going to be taking a look today at the Earth Magic Oracle card by Stephen D. Farmer. The artwork is by a variety of different artists, and I didn't remember that when I purchased this. Although after I saw that, I do remember reading somewhere that he had started to kind of look for submissions to choose an artist, and got so many that he enjoyed that he decided to just kind of go with multiple artists. Excuse me, but this is a 48 card oracle deck, and it is kind of dealing with earth magic. So we are really looking at the elements in regards to earth, although we do have two moon cards, and we do have some cards that are sort of different kinds of energies that aren't, quite straight, like, animals or trees and that kind of thing. So we do have some other areas, but it is dealing with earth magic. Now, I know that he also has a book by the same name, Earth Magic, that he deals with shamanic lessons about shamanism, his perspective on shamanism, and ways to heal yourself as well as healing others and the world. So I don't think the cards directly go with that, but I believe he uses the same one of the similar artists, one of his artists, on the cover of that. So there is that, but I don't know anything directly about that other than it is available because I did see this both at Books A Million as well as online. So it's a Hay House deck that would normally run $15.99. Of course, it's probably a little cheaper than that on Amazon, and I had picked it up for $8 on a Hay House sale, so that was quite exciting. So I kind of have these split up just because I wanted to make sure to point some things out, because they were placed alphabetically, so they didn't really have any rhyme or reason other than the alphabet. So for example, they have the four main equinox and solstices. So I guess I should at least put them kind of in order. So here we have the spring equinox, which is, I'm sorry, I've got a lot of glare. We have this, they are very shiny, and they're kind of a little bit sticky in terms of shuffling because of the glare, very similar to the Sacred Rebels Oracle. So we have the spring equinox for rebirth. We have the summer solstice for radiance, or the key word is radiance. We have the autumnal equinox, or autumnal equinox, which is for release. And then we have the winter solstice for reflection, which I think is quite beautiful and certainly fits into the issues or the topic of reflection that we have been discussing with our December cards of the day, I think. And so then here we can see the backs of the cards as well, which are gorgeous. I love Tree of Life kind of imagery. It's very, very powerful to me. It's obviously kind of built into my logo for The Truth in Story. There's just a book down here. So this is also one of the cards, which is a tree card. Cardstock wise, it's nice. I mean, it's not, Isabel, careful. It's not super thick. It's just a nice feel to it. Hay House makes decent cards, it seems to me. So it's similar. It's not super thick. It's a good cardstock. Other than the high shine, I don't particularly like the high shine, but there's a lot of decks like that. We have the four elements. I will say that earth, and these are not, they put these in this category. I just kind of pulled out things that seem very earth-based, just to kind of get a feel for the balance of the energies. And you definitely have a heavier emphasis on earth, but it's earth magic, so that certainly makes sense. We have probably the least in fire. We have fire, the actual word fire, and this is the keyword is passion. I'm going to have to do something. try this. It's just so high glare, gloss to them. So this is for passion. And so for fire, and then we have volcano, we have volatility. So those are kind of the two fire elements, at least the ones that stand out as fire elements. Air, we have wind, obviously, as being probably the primary one. For activation, we have fog for veiled. We have clouds, shape-shifting. Sorry about my phone. It's just way far away. I will go pick it up when I'm finished with this chunk and turn it down. Wolf, we have instinct. Rainbow, we have blessings. And that actually could be water as well. I don't know. We have lightning for power. I wasn't like thinking them through closely. I just kind of throwing them into quick piles of what kind of sent to me, what message it sent. And then we have the eagle for communion. That's a beautiful card. We have, as we can see, this Native American man here. We have a lot of, I guess what you maybe call indigenous cultures that are represented here in this deck. But we do also, I mean, we have also a couple that are more European, and even one or two that are more modern, just in terms of, like, we have these two, this couple here kind of sitting at the beach. So there is a mix, but I think for the most part we have the sense of more on the indigenous cultures that are maybe more living in tune with nature, theoretically. And I don't mean theoretic, that sounded wrong. It's not what I meant. I think that we have to be careful sometimes with indigenous cultures with kind of the noble savage sense. There are problems in all cultures, and including Native American cultures and in other indigenous cultures. They have their own sets of problems. And so that I think you have to be careful of. But in terms of their religious and their spirituality senses, the idea that they are much more tuned with the earth, and they live much more in tune with the earth, there's no questioning there. So I think that works well. So then for water energy, we have the rain for purification. I love that card. Ocean for ebb and flow. Iceberg for submerged. I love this as well. That idea there's so much that's underneath that's not being tapped into. We have waterfall for effortless, that sense of kind of moving along the path of least resistance. We have tsunami for a wake-up call. I do really like that we have, like with the volcano, we have energies that aren't, that are destructive, that are as well included in this deck. I love this one, Island of Solitude. We have this beautiful purple tree and this shaft of light coming down. I think that's stunning. For lake, we have stillness. For whale, we have breach. I love this, especially when you read the description of this in the guidebook, which I know I'm doing backwards. I usually always do the guidebook first, but I wanted to clear up the table first. But we have that sense of a creature, a huge, massive creature who lives all of its life under the water, but there are these moments in which it propels itself out of the water and has that sort of slow motion feeling of being completely out of its element before dropping back in. I think that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I kind of experienced the same feeling as what I get from this because I went skydiving. It was on my to-do list. I was in my 30s and I said, you know, a friend of mine, she was like, let's just go do it. And so we went up, I can't remember how, we went as high as you could go before wearing oxygen masks. And we went in tandem. So I was strapped to a large man with a wonderful Australian accent. I was not in Australia, that would have been awesome, but he was Australian. And so, you know, if you're going to get strapped to a large man with an Australian accent, that's a pretty good way to jump out of an airplane. But I have to say that there was the moment when you fall out of the plane, because, you know, because I was obviously on the front, and so when we were knelt in front of the opening where it was just you in the sky and the earth below and was so far down, and there is that moment where then you just fall out. And I will say that I have never experienced such a surreal moment as that initial falling, when for whatever, it was probably literally moments, but it felt like it froze in time, where I felt like it was just me and the sky, and being completely outside of the element, and there was nobody strapped to me. There was nothing except for me and this complete stillness that was just absolutely amazing. And that's what that's what this generates for me, this card. Here we have river for movement. So those are kind of the water cards. So then we have ones that I just kind of put in as being earth cards, and we talked about this green man in my last Vlogmas, but this is synergy, and I love this card because, as I said I tried to explain in the Vlogmas video, which I believe would have been Vlogmas day 13, and people did seem to understand what I was trying to say. What I love about this is that it's not a representation of the green man, but that we're actually seeing the green man. This is a rainforest. We're not seeing a human face on the green man. We're actually seeing the energy of the green man within the forest itself. That sense of needing everything to be working together and in tune in order for things to work. It's just beautiful, and I just love that. And then there is obviously also Gaia for the female earth energy as well. But here we have forest for breath. This could also be kind of air, because we think this brings to me the wind through the trees. So I quite probably have this wrong. Again, I was just kind of quickly going through. Here we have cave for sanctuary. Desert for vision quest. Fairies for earth magic. The beautiful tree for grounding. I love that. Meadow for vulnerability. I thought this was very powerful as well. We have such a beautiful thing. Not only are the flowers really quite small and fragile, but you also think about you think about Bambi and, you know, his mother, you know, saying to be careful out in the meadow because you're vulnerable. You're open, so wide open that you're open to hunters and things like that. So animals that come through here are actually quite vulnerable. So I thought that was quite interesting. We have mountain for... Sorry. We have mountain for strength. I know I said I was going to go turn that off. We have Gaia, of course, so the female energy of earth for nurturing. Crystals we have for focus. I think that's quite beautiful. It's almost like you're inside of those stones that you break. They look like rough rocks, and you break them in half, and it looks like you've walked into a magical cave. It's almost like you're inside that and looking out. And then we have these stone people for vigilance. I love this. They didn't use like Easter Island or something like that. They're actual natural standing stones, standing vigilance. I love that. So we have those. Now there were two cards that I felt kind of crossed, much like actually I will say, just for sake of, you know, this was all more about me kind of wrapping my head around the energies of this deck. It really helped me to kind of try to think this through and kind of see where it was going. Because, again, with the alphabetical, I just didn't feel like there was a sense of what the connections between cards. But with the whale, these two cards I feel sort of cross boundaries, are boundary crossers, I think, in a beautiful way. We already talked about the whale, living all its life in water and then taking those moments to propel by great force, to propel this giant body up and into the air, and then kind of hanging there for a moment before hitting back down. And then we have this beautiful card, which I didn't at first quite get, the dragonfly. But what I didn't know about dragonflies is that they actually spend about the first 4 years of their lives as a nymph in the water. And then it is, a time when the timing is right, they come up out of the water and spend the rest of their life in the air. And I just think that is such a beautiful, something I just really haven't paid a lot of attention to with dragonfly images. Is dragonflies a lot in shadowscapes. But the keyword for this is emergence, and I just really love this card. And then the same thing with the lotus. The word unfoldment is very odd to me. Somebody tell me if that's an actual word. But I do like to make up words myself. But this to me, for the lotus, to me, crosses all of the elements, because you have its roots down in the earth and in the muck and the mire. You have its stem crossing back and forth in the water. You have, obviously the flower, which is floating on top of the water, absorbing the energy of the sun for fire, and we have all of the air that's here. So this card to me kind of crosses all of the elements in a quite beautiful way. So I love that. So those were kind of crossing the different boundaries in a beautiful way that I thought they just kind of stood out to me as sort of tied in together. And then we do have the moons. We have the new, I wish we had all the moons, but we have, or at least like the waxing, the waning, and then the new moon and full moon. But we have the new moon here as promise. And then we have this gorgeous card. I am so sorry about the glare. It's just so strong. We have the full moon as completion. And this is a stunning card. I absolutely love it, but I am a full moon lady. So we have those two cards. And then these cards are just kind of miscellaneous ones. I will say that this card here is one that stands out to me the most as not fitting in with the rest of the deck, because we have this very medieval, we've had mostly all either indigenous peoples or one or two kind of more modern European people, and then all of a sudden we just have this random medieval people, and it just doesn't energetically for me fit in with the deck. But this is about music and harmony, and I just feel like there's so much you could do with you could have birds, like beautiful birds singing or something like that. I think you could use a more earth-based sense of harmony and music than this particular card. But you know what? You can't win them all. Here we have the dream time for creation. I think this is gorgeous. It reminds me of sort of Aboriginal Australian with that big, what are those called, like a diggity-doo or something? I don't know. I'm sure I'm so wrong about that. But I think this is a stunning card. Here we have love, and we have in the form of compassion, which I really like. Here we have dance. This is beautiful for celebration. We have ancestors, a keyword of generations that I love. We have the snake winding through that sort of transformative energy and the perpetual cycle of losing its skin and gaining new skin and starting over. That's kind of tied in there. It's beautiful. We have the childhood innocence. So here again, we do have some more, European peoples, little children. So we do kind of have a broad range of when there are, people, when there are actual people in the cards, we do have a broad range, and so that is, I think, a very positive thing. Here we have dawn for new beginnings. I love this card for ceremony. We have invocation, and she has like a crystal grid, and she's got her hands over kind of the energy, forming like almost like a crystal ball over the energy of the crystal grid that she's working. We have this sort of sense of spirit around her. She's kneeling on a very it feels like transformative fire energy, and we have the candle here. I just think it's quite a beautiful card. We have Milky Way for perspective, which I think is stunning because it, you know, when you just imagine how many stars and things are in that, how many systems we have, it just boggles the mind. We have this one. I have some problem. I'm not sure about this one yet. And truthfully, I haven't sat down and read this card, which I'm surprised not. But this is about karma, and it's kind of linked to DNA. And I guess I don't link physicalities such as DNA with concepts of karma. Again, it's not that I can't read this. I understand the concept that the card is trying to get across, but it strikes a little close to the idea of the sins of the father that can be found in Christianity. That I don't like. I do have some issues with karma in generally when it's taken to the extreme in which you end up with caste systems and things like that, which you can see in India. So I am quite of the mindset of reincarnation and the idea of karma. But as with anything, I think that it can be taken too rigidly and actually cause issues. But yeah, that connecting of the sort of spiritual passing on with the physical passing on is slightly problematic, although it does work. So again, I'll be able to work with this card, but my initial response to it was uncomfortable for some reason. So I'll have to work with that. I love this card. Here we have a shaman, ancient healing wisdom. I think we have this absolutely stunning face. Kind of reminds me of something that might be on the Mary L Tarot, but I think that's a beautiful card. So we have those that are more like ideas and concepts and dance and things like that, that just kind of, I don't know, I grouped those together for whatever reason. And so those are the cards of the Earth Magic Oracle. I know that was a little bit of a different way to approach these cards, but it really seemed to work for me just to kind of, I thought that I was going to have much more of an instant connection with these cards. More so than the Wisdom of Avalon, but I actually connected to the Wisdom of Avalon quite immediately, and I didn't have the same immediate reaction, but as I worked with them and looked through them, I also did a card of the day with it that went very well, and then when this is actually the second time I've done the walkthrough, and after the first time I did the walkthrough, I did a couple 3-card readings, and they really worked very beautifully together. And so it kind of grew on me with sitting with the cards and working a little bit with the cards. They've really grown on me, and I'm quite, and everybody has such great things to say about this, and I can see why. There is a fabulous deep energy to these cards. I just had to give it a little bit of sit through and work with it, but I'm really happy to have picked these up for $8. They've been on my wish list for a long time, just not anything that, you know, kind of trumped other things I was looking at until the $8 sort of made everything get trumped. So I don't know why I'm shuffling these because I still need to look at the book, but I like how they shuffle. And the stickiness of the high gloss has kind of wound itself down, and they actually shuffle quite beautifully. They don't have that same buttery smoothness as, say, like the Wild Unknown or the Tao Oracle or the Fountain Tarot, which has that beautiful matteness. But they are working themselves in, and they do. I think I might. It has kind of a darkish tone. I'm thinking of doing black. I'm wondering if there's a really dark purple ink. I might have to check that out because I don't really like these raw edges, which is funny because I don't really, almost all of my Oracle decks actually are either gilded or I've done the edges, so this is going to bother me. So I might either do them black or see if there is like a rich purple ink that I might do these with. So, okay, I'm going to stop playing around with the cards after one more shuffle. And then we'll look at the book. Actually, since I just did all that shuffling, let's just look at some of the cards together. So here we have Rainbow and Clouds and Stillness. See, that's so beautiful because we have that idea of blessings and shape-shifting and taking a step back and being, you know what, let me zoom in. I do think the cards look beautiful. I love this card for stillness. There's such a heavy, almost feels like it's in the South in the United States, and that kind of heavy, the trees kind of dripping in the South. Oh, there's a name for that, and it's totally escaped my mind. There's a song that has it in there, Seven Bridges Road. But yeah, it just to me reminds me of that sort of heavy stillness of a very hot day by a lake that I love. But we have this very, you know, the droplets of water causing the rainbow, causing the clouds, causing this heavy stillness here. And so you almost have that sense of, because, you know, obviously this, after the rain, we have that sense of the rainbow coming and the blessing. I do like that it's blessing rather than promise, that we sometimes get associated with rainbows all the time. That doesn't sit well with me, because I have a huge pet peeve about the whole Noah mythology, but we aren't going to go there. But I do quite like that. But the idea, and I love the shape-shifting clouds. So we have a very heavy water feel here, depending on the question that was being asked, that I think is quite beautiful. I'm just going to lay a few. So here we have synergy and communion. So look at that. So this is the synergy of when man and animal are in tune versus in fighting against each other, or in the moment of hunting. Both of these are can be considered creatures that hunt. You know, hawks are, or sorry, eagles are animals that hunt. And, you know, Native Americans also subsisted their living and survival off of hunting. But we have this moment of when things are done correctly, when we're not over hunting, when we're not killing off the entire buffalo range, like, you know, the Europeans had to come in and destroy the herds that way. There was a sense of communion even in the cycle of life and death that occurs between the peoples and the animal, as well as even in the natural cycles of life in a rainforest. So those are beautiful together, to come up together. And then we have that sense of promise. So I love that the new day is beginning, that sort of working within balance, and then things are going to go better and things are going to work out well. So I think that's quite beautiful. Here we have breath, or forest actually, and that sort of effortlessness leading to strength. And I love that, because think about that. We have that air, we think of the wind going through the trees, and that being with your breath, and the same sort of feeling winding through the trees. And then we have the water that is effortlessly going down, but there is such a strength in that, isn't there? You know, there is a strength in water. It erodes over time entire canyons to be, you know, like the Grand Canyon. So we have that sense that both of these things, that moment of stillness, that stepping back in meditation, as well as going with the flow, very Zen energy here. And that Zen energy doesn't mean softness. Well, it can mean softness of breath, softness of, but it truly has its own strength. So yeah, I do think that these cards actually work very beautifully together, and I really love how they read. So yeah, we're doing everything backwards for this particular review, aren't we? So we'll take a quick look at the book, which I feel is almost kind of a moot point, because you can see how things, with the keywords and the images, you get so much out of these cards. But we'll take a look here at the book itself. It's a Hay House book. It's quite lovely. It's bound. It's a typical Hay House book. It's about 163 pages, and it has Earth Magic Oracle Cards, Guidebook by Stephen D. Farmer. You know, it has sort of your basic, what does it say? For the love of Mother Earth and all her children. It has a table of contents that lets you, obviously, they are alphabetized though, which makes it quite easy. So, but you do have the kind of entire listing of both the card and the card keyword. We have instructions with working with the cards, just kind of typical things. We have how to store your cards, oracle card readings. We have the 1 card, the 3 card, a couple of 3 cards, a 4 card relationship, and then the typical cross that we often see, because the 5 card is it's probably about as big as I would ever go with straight oracle cards. I don't generally do 5 cards with oracle cards. So it has that, and then it gets to the meanings of the cards. And we have a black and white image of the card, as well as the title, the keyword, and then a good 2 pages or so, a little over 2 pages of text about the actual card. First sort of descriptive, and then it goes into italics that seems to focus a little bit more on the, how you would actually use the cards in terms of meaning. So that holds through all the cards. Let's just, I know again people do like to hear sort of the voice of the guidebook. So let's do that DNA one that I had a little bit of. Well, that's going to be at the front because it is alphabetical, Kelly. Let's see if I can quickly grab the card, but probably you know how that is when you go to find a card. Oh, and I have them whopper jawed. There it is. Of course, it was right at the beginning. I'm telling you, it's just like. Okay, so here we have the DNA card. It says karma. A concept in many Eastern religions is a Sanskrit word implying the greater universal laws of cause and effect, providing an implied code of ethics within the structure of the seemingly endless cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, or samsara, which we experience throughout our lives in many different versions. The mistaken notion about karma is that it's some kind of punishment, but it's far from that. In fact, in its purest form, it simply asserts that our conduct in this lifetime will determine our next incarnation. It has also come to mean how our behavior and actions in this lifetime create consequences in a slightly different version of the golden rule. We not only carry our soul's karma into this lifetime, but also embedded in the complex coding of our DNA is our genetic ancestral karma. That's interesting. The double helix structure of DNA contains codes that have been passed down from our parents and grandparents as well as our ancestors. Therefore, we have some of the same genetic information that comes from the DNA of very early humans. In this card, we see 2 entwined serpents with double helixes on either side. Variations of this archetypal image exist in many cultures, both traditional and contemporary. It's a graphic representation of the most ancient ancestry we can lay claim to, our DNA, the fundamental substance of life itself that provides substantial determinations of our life path. Okay, so I quite like that because that's actually a dual. We have sort of the soul individual reincarnation karma effect, and then we have the ancestral physical. See, that's why you got to read the guidebook, Kelly. And then it goes into an italicized portion that says, aspects of your soul entered your primitive physical self long before you had begun to take form. While the DNA that you inherited from your biological parents has a physical component, it also has a soul pattern that came together in the creation of you. You are predisposed to follow the karmic dictates of this patterning to some extent. Yet as you evolve in your consciousness and expand the light of awareness, you can make choices that shift and modify this ancestral design. This is one of those times. You can feel the tug of your soul that is both ancient and karmic, yet you also recognize a persistent and loving communication from your higher self that contradicts the more familiar solutions before you. The choice is up to you, but know that every time you heed the guidance of your higher self, no matter what etheric or physical form it takes, human consciousness is elevated. In a sense, it becomes a choice between destiny and fate. Okay, so I quite like that. That's quite interesting, and I can definitely see how that would work into a reading. So that gives you both a chance for me to look at this particular card, as well as you can kind of hear the voice of Stephen Farmer as he's writing in this guidebook. So there we have it. The beautiful, I'm really loving the energy of this. And again, it wasn't that spot on energy of immediate, like, whoa, 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 like zing, zing, zing. It's more of a deep, very deep energy that is emerged as I physically worked with it, which makes sense. It's earth magic. And so there is that sense of the more that I physically worked with the cards, the more that connection and that voice started to come out. So I think that's quite wonderful and powerful. So this has been a look at the Earth Magic Oracle cards by Stephen D. Farmer.